Good morning, everyone. I'm Terry Watson. I'm the policy advisor with the Building Codes Division. Can everyone hear me? I'm hoping. Okay, looks like I'm getting smiles back, so that's good. We're here today to talk about the Oregon Inspector Certification rules, OAR 918098. Let's see, I wanted to wait a little bit to make sure everybody got a chance to log in. We have some of the people here that RSVP'd. Let's see. I'm just gonna go down the list and see if people are here or not. It looks like Garrett is with us today from Astoria. Pardon?
I'm here.
Okay, great, good. And Michelle from Springfield?
Michelle's here.
Oh, great. Okay. And let's see. We have Paul from City of Portland.
This is Terry Whitehill. I'm from the city of Portland.
Yeah, and this is Paul. I'm from City of Portland also.
Okay, great. Okay. Let's see. And we have Marcus on the line or in the room, in the virtual room.
Yeah, just a guest.
Okay, great. Okay, and then let's see. Is there anybody else? I think everybody else is from building codes. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started in the interest of time. Okay, so we're going to have a discussion today about the rules that we're considering. I think I emailed out a draft. I hope you all received that this morning. Is that correct? I hope so.
I don't know if I did because I didn't sign up for this, Terry Whitehill. So I may not have gotten one. If you could forward that to me, it'd be great.
I would be happy to, Terry. I'll do that in just a minute, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna look at a draft of the rules and look at some considerations that we're looking at. We're basically looking at the application renewal and expiration in CE. What I'm gonna do now is I'm going to introduce the training and outreach manager, Stephen Sims, and Dana Fisher, the training program coordinator, and they are gonna take it from here, okay?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Stephen Sims. I'm the Training and Outreach Manager for the Building Codes Division. Thanks for joining us at this rulemaking hearing, RAC, Advisory Committee. And in fact, the purpose of this meeting is to give you an idea of what we're thinking with respect to future rules and then get your advice before we actually promulgate rules with respect to certification and not only certification for the OIC, but also for specialty code certification. I really want to break this discussion down into two areas. And one is the approval and renewal of the Oregon Instructor Certification, the OIC. That is the umbrella certification that anyone who conducts inspections in the state of Oregon has to have. And it's something that renews every 3 years. And I think most people who are online right now are familiar with that. But in addition to the renewal of the OIC, we also have to talk about the renewal of the specialty certifications for the individual specialty areas that people in the field practice within. Those areas usually are on a renewal cycle that are tied to the code changes, or more importantly, code changes and completing the training associated with the code change. So those are the two main areas that we're looking to make changes in right now. We also want to do a lot of housekeeping. If you've tried to read through the inspector certification and training rules, they're a bit of a mess. They're a bit all over the place. We don't have things grouped properly. So we want to set up a new system with our rules where we explain the requirements for the Oregon Inspector Certification for the OIC. and we explain the requirements for the individual specialty certifications. We explain this process for renewal of the OIC, and we explain the process for renewal of the specialty certifications. And finally, we explain the process for what to do in the event either the OIC or the specialty certification has expired, how to reinstate that certification. So we're trying to group those all together instead of having them peppered throughout OAR 918-098. With respect to renewal and expiration, one of the problems we have is, as I said earlier, the OIC expires every 3 years, and it expires on October 1st of each year. At the same time, our specialty codes certifications expire on October 1st of the code change year. That can lead to some confusion when people are trying to make sure in good faith that they're keeping their certs up. They might figure, well, I've taken all of my required code change training for my specialty certification by October 1st, and I've sent that into the division. I'm great, I'm good to go. But they may forget, because the OIC also expires on October 1st, they may forget to submit a new OIC application. So we get lapses there. Another problem with having both of these certifications expire on the 1st is sometimes, particularly since the advent of COVID, or since COVID's been visited upon us, we don't always have the code change training for the specialty certification available prior to the adoption of the new, or the effective date of the new code. This, of course, is problematic because you can't complete the required training by October 1st if the required training is not there. So what we want to do is change our timelines around a little bit to eliminate the confusion. What we would like to do is continue to tie the OIC and the specialty code certification dates together, but we want to move those dates out from October 1. We want to move them away from the effective date of most codes to sometime in the future in order to give people time to complete their code change training. I believe in our current proposal, which again is simply a working draft, it's a proposal, it's not a rule right now. What we would like to do is move the date for renewal of both the OIC and any specialty certifications to June 1st. By moving it out to June 1st, that would give us from October until June for individuals to complete their necessary code change training. Tying these two together and moving them out a little bit into the future also allows us to do a better job of tracking who's in compliance and who's not in compliance. We plan after new rules are adopted to begin to track everything electronically. So if someone is out of compliance on June 1st, should that be the date that we choose to adopt, we can send out a notice immediately saying, hey, you've not completed your required code change training. And we know that it's accurate because we will be documenting everything. That ties into continuing education and the proposals we have with respect to the rule proposals we have with respect to continuing code change training. COVID and technology have made it clear for us that most code update training in the future will be done electronically or done remotely. As the training manager, I hope to be able to offer some live in-person training at some time in the future. I think there's a quality difference when you train in person, and I also think that there's a level of professional discourse that takes place when we train in person that you can't quite get virtually. But for now, most code change training will be in person. I'm sorry, will be virtual. When we were doing in-person training, it was easy for us to determine who had completed code change training. Either you attended the class or you didn't. We have a different situation now that things are being done remotely. So the purpose of the proposed changes presented to you today, one of the purposes is to put the obligation on the certificate holder to complete any required code change training and to report that they've completed that code change training to the division so we can record it. In addition to on the certificate holder to report that they've completed the code change training, there's always the continuing obligation on the part of the building official to ensure that anyone who is working for them has completed their required training. But this just kind of makes it official that the individual has the obligation to report that information to us that they've completed it. In the event, now that we've given ourselves approximately 9 months from the date of code change to the date of expiration to complete the training and report to us, but in the event that individuals still have not completed their code change training, at some point we need to have a system for allowing license or certificates to be expired for failure to comply. So with respect to the expiration of certificates, we've adopted a system or proposing the adoption of a system similar to the way that we handle expired licenses in the plumbing, electrical, and boiler realms. Basically, once you're expired, you get a notice from us, and you've got a short period of time to rectify the shortcoming, the lack of training. After that, you can make a formal request to us through your building official, the person who's responsible that only properly certified people come to the division, or I'm sorry, properly certified people perform inspections. They can make a request that, hey, this certificate holder is expired. They need to complete their work. I'm asking for an additional amount of time for them to complete it. And then finally, after that, if they have not completed it, we would move on to expiring the certification. So that's another part of the proposed changes that we'd like to see in these rules. Now, these updates are only concepts at this point in time. As Terry stated earlier, if you haven't gotten it already, you'll get a copy of the draft rules. But our purpose here today is to discuss these potential changes or any other potential changes, ideas that you might have about how we might make our certification, renewal, and expiration process more efficient and more user-friendly for you, because those of you who are BOs or inspectors out in the field, this is how you maintain your certification. We want to make sure it's easy and something that we can do. We don't want it to be we want it to be cost effective, and we don't have want it to be time consuming. So that's a summary of the comments regarding the concepts we'd like to propose for rulemaking. I'm going to turn it back to Terry because this is the time for public comment.
Are you ready? Okay, so have you had a chance to review the draft rules? I hope everybody should have them. Terry, Laura emailed them to you. And we actually sent out an issue document with the meeting agenda. And so we can look at that as well. So we can either go through the draft rules page by page, or we can go through the issue document. Terry.
Yeah, thank you for sending those to me. I got them. I'm sorry that I didn't get signed up ahead of time, and
That's okay.
that's my fault. Hey, the question that I have is, I talked with our finance people. June and July aren't a great time for us to be processing, but if it's by June 1, that should fall before that. When will the notice, and when can we start processing them all? Because we typically do ours as a big batch and try to send them all in at the same time. How much notice, or you usually send us a notice ahead of time saying, yeah, it's got to be done by this date. But do you have there's nothing in here that I saw on my just quick glance through it that kind of talks about when you will send that notice and when we can start the processing and getting things taken care of.
So normally we send out a letter 45 days before. If we were to adopt these rules and it was June 1st, as long as the CEs are completed and you submit your application with the fee, anytime between in that 45-day period. So if we back up, let's see, June 1st is the deadline. It would be May. It'd be sometime in April, mid-April, you would receive the letter. So anytime mid-April to June 1st.
Right. So once we get the letter, then we can, at that point, process and send things in.
I believe so. Is that correct, Steve?
That would be correct. And I guess my question for Terry, we've been doing 45-day notice for years, at least since we've had a program. I guess my question back would be, is that an adequate amount of time? Should it be more than 45 days? I think when we discussed this internally, there was a fear that if it was more than 45 days, people forget. You gave me 60 days and I forgot after 30. So that's one question that's worth discussing.
What do you think, Terry?
You know, it's the big thing is making sure everybody gets the training, and that's what we we have a training group, so they kind of run herd over that and get everybody so that we have a record that everybody's done their training. And then at that point it becomes pretty easy for us. It's just making sure who's all working for us and has certifications and getting that all turned in, because instead of having the individuals do it, it's our training group that does it for everybody and sends it all in as one big package and one big check. So yeah, I think that probably works for us. I like the fact that you actually have it set a process if something does go awry on how we can work through that. So
Yes.
I think that probably will still work. Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. Michelle, you put in the chat when I ask about, does anybody have any questions, not in entirety? Was there something that you wanted to follow up on that?
Oh, no, I just haven't had a chance to read through the entire set of amendments.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Are there any, I know that this is kind of like, oh, thanks. Laura just put the information in there in the chat in case you haven't had a chance to look at them. So maybe we could just go through the issues and maybe that'll prompt some questions. So if we look at the certification renewal and expiration process, are there areas of the certification renewal and expiration process that are out of date or would benefit from changes or improvement? Do you think? And maybe there's, maybe you think everything's okay.
So this is Marcus. I've got a question.
Okay.
So if on October 1st is when our code change happens and we're going to renew on June 1st, will the classes be available for our CEs between October and June 1st? And then if they are, will they be live or will they be a recorded option for people that have to work during the day? Maybe they can take it in the evenings and then take the test after that and still get those credits.
If I may, Terry, I'll take that.
Sure.
Mark, even in the best of circumstances, using the October 1st date, we don't always have the training available October 1st or even November 1st. A lot of times the books aren't available. The hope theoretically is that the training will be available sometime soon after October 1st. And now we have about a 9-month window to get that training, so it should be available to everyone. With respect to accessing the training in the short term, the foreseeable future, the training is going to be virtual. It is probably going to be on demand, supplemented by at least for most specialties, an in-person Q&A. I'm sorry, not an in-person, a live virtual Q&A where people can tune in to a live presentation on Zoom or some other platform so they can get questions answered. That is for the foreseeable future how the training is going to be offered. The in-demand portion they could view at any time during work hours or after hours. It is still a hope that we can eventually have some type of in-person training, but for the foreseeable future, training will be available via remote and it will be on demand.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other changes or improvements that you'd like to see with the renewal or expiration process?
I can see that Garrett has a question, not so much on the rules, but with respect to continuing education requirements for BOs. There is no statutory continuing education requirement for BOs other than what's necessary to maintain any specialty certification that they might have, Garrett. What we would like to do is eventually put together an annual BOs class, just an update or a refresher class or a hot topic, call you what it will, but there will not be a requirement per se.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
And if I could make a brief comment on that, if it's possible, if you're going to be exploring that as an option for building official CE renewals or any, to offer it, if you're offering it through like OBOA, to make it available to the same information available outside of OBOA, because of not all jurisdictions are able to afford or make the time available for taking those classes through OBOA.
Very well taken, and I'll note, since it's not a rules issue, but more of an issue of how we conduct business, it would be something we would offer and not through OBOA.
Thank you, Michelle. Terry, do you have a question?
It seems like in the past that if you got your organ inspector certification within that 3-year period before they had to be updated again, that person could skip that update series. Is that in the rule anywhere? I didn't see that.
I do not believe it's in the rule. My understanding is that whatever, pardon me, whatever that 3-year period is, if you received your OIC within a month of October 1st, you had to renew. But I'm going to defer to Dana Fisher, who's been here a lot longer than I have. Dana, can you clarify exactly how we handle individuals who receive their initial OIC shortly before the October 1st date?
Sure, not a problem. Hello, everyone. So typically what the division does, if you renew your OIC within 2 months prior to the OIC renewal, that renewal is waived. And was that the gist of your question, Terry?
No, it was more about if somebody got their OIC for the first time and took the test.
Right. And so I'm going to turn my webcam off because I'm having web issues and I keep freezing. But yes, so anyone who gets their OIC for the first time within 2 months of that renewal deadline, we go ahead and we waive that next renewal for them because they only had it for 2 months and we want them to get that full 3 years out of it.
So if it was anything before 2 months beforehand, then they would have to renew again right away, even though they just gotten it. Okay.
Correct. That's been the past practice.
That might be a comment I had. It would seem like that if they got it any time in that 3 years from the last renewal, that you might want to exempt them at the next renewal, since they've actually just taken the test and should know the material pretty well. Just a thought.
So Terry, what would your recommendation be?
I think not just the 2 months, but I would think that if they took it any time from after the last renewal, that they could skip this first renewal and then join in the second one.
So 3 years without any sort of training? Is that what you're saying?
No, they would still have to do any continuing education. It's just that they wouldn't have to renew again, because the way it is right now, you could have taken that test, paid your $125, and then 3 months later have to pay again. But you would have had to, anybody who's new has to take the tests for the code certificates, and they always have to take the new training, but
Okay, so it's not training per se, it's the renewal process.
yeah.
It looks like Garrett had a question. Are the classes going to be more specific to certification or just on the updates for the new code changes like we have done before?
And I just sent a private chat back to Garrett asking if that question was specific to the proposed BO update classes.
Oh, okay.
So this was more for all the other ones in general, like, your residential structural inspector or commercial plans examiner or something like that. I kind of wondered if we were going to get more specific training or if it's just going to be just updates like we've done before.
And that's, of course, up to each individual chief. I think for the most part, they tend to lean towards the specific updates for that code cycle. Having said that, and again, aside from the rules and as the training section, I'd say that if there are specific issues that you'd like touched on that are beyond or in addition to the code changes, please send us an email at the training and outreach section, and we can talk to the chief for that section about either incorporating some training within the code change update or putting on some separate training.
Okay, I think that answers my question. Because I was meaning more from the requirements of the state more than because I'm a building official, but I don't have any inspectors per se, but just looking forward to the future and what's going to happen next.
Got it. No, and we'd like to provide you with that additional type of training, so we can work with you on that.
Sounds good.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the issues document. Are there any elements that are not currently incorporated to the certification renewal and expiration process that the division should consider? It looks like we've kind of talked about that a little bit, but I just want to make sure that I didn't miss anything.
So while we're on that subject, this is Marcus again. One quick question. So if I'm a licensed plumber and I'm taking plumbing CEUs, which I have 24 every 3 years that I have to take, why can I not count any of those or vice versa with my OIC towards either license? So why can't I count any of my OIC classes, which covers a lot of the trades, same issues, towards my plumbing recertification or vice versa?
And that's because the requirements for the plumbing license continuing education are specific to the licensure of a plumber performing plumbing work. The continuing education or code update training for an inspector is specific to inspection and building official services. They're simply deemed separate entities or topics.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. Are there aspects to the current certification renewal and expiration process that are particularly useful or helpful that should remain part of the process? Okay, not seeing any comments. I'm gonna go ahead and move on then. So the next issue is code change continuing education requirements. So we're looking for feedback. Are there areas of the code change continuing education requirements that are out of date or would benefit from changes or improvements?
Kind of like I was saying before, some of the more technical ones like fire life safety or commercial plans examiner could be useful to get a little bit more in depth, especially with the addition of all the energy code requirements, because some of that stuff's kind of hard to understand and apply. So I think a little bit more in depth in the commercial world would be amazing. Besides just the updates.
Okay. Thanks, Garrett. Terry?
Yeah, no, I just want to say that I'm very supportive of doing the online training. I think that helps everybody because it can be so difficult to break people away and still provide the services that we need to provide. So I'm very much supportive of those changes, doing the classes online. And yeah, so just wanted to give my support for that. I think that's a real good change.
Glad to hear.
Especially for me, being in Astoria, it's about 2.5 to 3 hours to get to Salem. So it is appreciated to have the online option, even though I like getting out every now and then.
Understood.
Okay. Are there elements that are not currently incorporated into the code change continuing education requirements that the division should continue, or sorry, should consider?
This is Terry again. I just want to again give my support because I think it has been a problem in the past when you were trying to do classes and the books weren't even out yet. So I think that is a good thing to give more time here and to also put in those processes on what happens if people don't get things done in time and how that can be corrected. And hopefully there'll be a good, I think you've been putting things up on the web and have spreadsheets so that BOs can look up their staff and make sure that what they think has happened and what you show has happened are the same thing. Having those kind of resources available will help us to make sure that we're getting everybody certified that needs to be and it's done right.
And we'll continue to put that information up on the web in future code cycles.
Yeah, no, it's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Marcus, do you have your hand up?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's my, oh, yeah, it is. It's my mouse, sorry. Okay, are there aspects to the current code change continuing education requirements that are particularly useful or helpful that should remain a part of the process? Okay, I'm not seeing any response, so I'm just going to go ahead and move on. So do you think there's any potential fiscal or economic impact of this rulemaking?
Yeah, this is Terry. I'm not, I think you're still charging the 125 is what you were already charging. So I don't think that there is, yeah, it's just timing. And I understand that where it was probably wasn't the best place for it to be. And like I say, our main concern was that it didn't hit in June and July. The 1st of June is fine because we'd be processing it in the 45 days before. So that works for us, I do believe.
Wonderful. Okay.
And also the fact that a lot of these trainings are going to be held virtually will make a positive impact on finances for gas, travel, and all of that too. So I appreciate that.
Okay, wonderful. Positive impact. Okay. Great. Does anybody else have any further comments?
Paul has a comment in the chat box with respect to revised 9/18/098-1020 with respect to the requirements for obtaining a specialty certification. In 3B, we state that they need to complete a code's, they need to complete a division certification practicum class, and he's suggesting that we say successfully complete.
Okay.
That's certainly worth taking under advisement.
Okay. That in there. Okay, got that. Thank you. Okay.
This is Terry again. It sounds like we have to the 5th if we notice something else and want to send in a written comment on something. Is that correct?
Yes, that would be this Friday.
Yeah.
Friday at 5 o'clock. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Gosh, we're moving right along here. So issue 4, what are the potential impacts on racial equity in the state of this rulemaking?
You know, the one thing that I did look at, because it's nice that you have for the actual certificates that you can do a test or you can do the class. You have different ways that people can get there because different people learn differently. But for the OIC, there's really only one path, and that's taking the test. Is that correct? So that's the only thing on an equity basis that you might want to consider. Just a thought anyway, that maybe you could offer a class as a way of as another method instead of just only the test. I'll kind of look to you on that, Steve.
Got you. Thank you.
Okay.
We'll talk about that.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Okay, I'm not seeing anything. Okay, well, you guys have just moved through this, and gals have moved through this very quickly this morning. We had till 11 o'clock, but I don't think we're going to need all this time. So you have given us all kinds of information. And has everybody, I know we've been on this meeting, had a chance to look through the draft rules? And again, you can get us any information until this Friday at 5 o'clock if you have comments about the rules, concerns, anything that you see that you'd like maybe something different. I do have all this information that I'm going to process and put together a meeting summary. We will take all this information together and put it into consideration, and then we will be moving forward. Steve, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No other comments other than to say that rules specifically, comments directly related to the rules should be submitted to the email address that is found in the notice of the rulemaking hearing. Shameless plug for the training and outreach section. If you have specific issues regarding training, please feel free to send them directly to the BCD training box or to contact me directly. Thank you.
Yes, and I believe that's the DCBS rules coordinator email box.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's the one you should send the comments to. Are there any other questions before we wrap it up here? Okay.
I had one that's not related to our session here.
Oh, okay, sure. Go ahead.
So it's basically on certifications for civilians that want to enter into the building inspection realm. Is it true that those certifications for like residential, structural, mechanical inspector / plans examiner, the class you take for 6 months is only available to people that work for jurisdictions and not the general public? Or has that been opened back up to the general public? Because I got like people wanting to join, but they have to get hired first kind of thing, if that's the case.
I want to recheck how we handle that in the rules. I think the way it's written in the rules right now, you are not required to work for a jurisdiction in order to sit for a residential class. I know in practice, because of demand, we have been requiring that people be actually actively employed by a jurisdiction, because once we start letting people not employed by a jurisdiction in, we were finding it was squeezing out all the demand that we were getting from jurisdictions.
Also, that might open up back again for civilians that want to enter, because a lot of times these employers are looking, going, well, you don't even have a certification. Why should I give you a chance? And so it's like kind of like a catch-22 per se.
Right. Yeah, it's something, and again, this is aside from the rules, Terry, so you don't have to worry about this, but yeah, it's something we go back and forth about. It's jurisdictions say, oh, we need more spaces to train our current employees. And then other jurisdictions say, hey, if we could get some people who have the cert, we'd have a pool to choose from. So that's something I think we're going to have to battle through internally, and also in discussions with BOs as a group and with OBOA about what is the right target population for the residential classes.
Well, I'd love to be involved in that. We do have some meetings in that, because there's an extreme shortage of inspectors, building officials, plan examiners, you name it. There's a shortage, and I definitely get questions about it all the time. Like, how could I do it? Because I think as of right now, correct me if I'm wrong, you can't go get like the ICC residentials in order to get into the state and be inspected, right? Only the commercial ones.
Right. So they're stuck. They don't have a door open to them. So I'm going to take Garrett, I'm going to talk with our staff a little bit, and maybe give you a call a little bit later this week and educate myself a little bit.
Yeah, I would love that, because I definitely have some input in how we have like a Chemeketa program, we have a Portland program, and it's not tied to the state certifications, and so they go get the 2-year degree, and it doesn't mean anything until they enter the state program.
Right.
And would love to see some sort of integration in the future, or be involved, because nobody knows about this career field at all. It's like building inspector, what the heck is that?
No, we've talked about that. It's what is the career pathway and how do people find it? Well, unless you work for a building department, it's probably pretty hard to find.
Exactly. I just happened to work in the construction trade, so it worked out for me, but a lot of people don't know, and it's just an excellent career field with a lot of opportunities.
No, I agree, and we have to figure out a way to open that up a little bit. So I'm gonna get schooled by some of my own staff first, then have a conversation with you and share it with other BOs and see what the right pathway might be.
That sounds good. I look forward to it.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, thank you everyone for your time this morning. And again, if you have any additional comments to the draft rules, please get them into the rules coordinator email address by Friday, August 5th at 5 o'clock.
This is Terry. I just want to thank you guys for holding these meetings and actually listening to what we have to say and taking that into comment, because there have been times in the past where I haven't felt that way, but it's not anymore, and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, the weather's a lot cooler, so enjoy your day. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.